Okay, just gone 9 o'clock in Sydney time. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Michael Cook. This is the fourth webinar exploring the functionality of Powerproject. Our previous webinars are on the Solid Support website, where you will also find information on Powerproject online training courses. Remember that Solid Support can help with your Powerproject setup, templates and code libraries. If you need help with those, please get in touch. We're once again very lucky to have Chris Ray with us from Malikasoft to conduct today's session. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. So welcome everybody. We've got a couple of people joining at the moment as we're speaking. So today's session is about formatting your project in Powerproject. So if I go to our first slide, which hopefully everybody can see in there, the areas we're going to look at here, and literally this is the main slide, we will be going straight into product after this, but we're going to be looking at improving the presentation of your project, and in that we're going to be using Powerproject and lots of the formatting options and how to do some of those formatting options in the system. We'll go through those. We're going to highlight enable you to highlight the important parts of your project. Again, a bad output or a bad formatting setting can let a project down if that's what you're using to communicate with your clients. So we'll be looking at formatting for display inside Powerproject and also for printing inside Powerproject, and then we will move on to saving the appearance of what you've just done, that formatting, because one type of formatting works for one type of audience. You may want a different one for another audience, which also then moves us on to the ability to save as a template. And so we'll look at that. And I say, as before, you will be muted at the moment. There is a questions section where you can pop any questions into, and I'll try to monitor them as I go, but if I don't cover them as we're going through, please feel free and I'll answer them at the end as we go through. So saying that, what we'll now do is we will now see it in action and see go to Powerproject in there. So if I open up here, I have Powerproject. This is Powerproject version 15.02, the latest release of the software. And the first part we're going to be looking at is looking at hierarchy and appearance of your project. So other systems, when you have this in there, can be fairly bland and very hard to understand what's happening. So in that scenario, if I just put a few activities in here, and I'm just copying and pasting from Excel, a few activities, and I'm just going to link those together. And I'm going to now just group these into sections and summarize these into like phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Now notice here that when I do this in these sections, unlike other systems which will indent slightly the text, which is not always easy to see, we have a coloring hierarchy system that we can have in here. And I actually made that phase 3 twice. So we can see we've got this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which comes to appearance over here. And again, as you increase the number of levels, which is unlimited, you have different colors and different settings in there, and your appearance. All of this can actually be set up under appearance, and then you come with a template. You have the default colorings that you see here, and there's the blue, the turquoise. It then goes into a thistle color. Very nice names we have here for the different colors. And we've gone out, pre-built is 8 levels, but you're not restricted to 8 levels. You can go as many levels down as you want, and you can even control the different font sizes and font appearance inside here, and the style, and even each the font there. So you can really theme it to your own corporate and company area and how you want the colors to look inside there. So that's the first option really for formatting side, is the hierarchy color. You can see that. Now taking that a step further, if I just go to the format tab up here, and this is always available depending on what you're selected, is what options will appear. But inside the formatting, I'm just going to go to formatting in here and general, and I can actually turn that formatting hierarchy color to appear across the bar chart as well. So if you've got a large bar chart you're looking across, you can see the sections go across, and you can even choose not to have that on there, so you can turn it off completely if you just want it plain. So I'm going to leave it as that in that way. But what it does bring us to is this format section we've got up here, and just to briefly talk about this, this is your quick access to getting to turning things on and off in formatting. Rather than having to right click or go into format bar chart and go into your settings, you can quite easily just say, well, I don't want to see the critical path, I don't want to see float inside there, I don't want to see grid lines, I don't want to see ruling lines. You can turn those on and off as you go through. So this is a really quick way you can just come back and turn these and go to these. And again, with Powerproject, depending on how people like to work, some people like to work using the buttons at the top here, some people go to format bar chart. You can also right click and go to format bar chart or display switches, which gives you those, and each of those actually have their own shortcut keys as well, which allows you to just do it for the keyboard if you're a keyboard person. So we'll just go a bit further on from this. So going back to the formatting side, we've got the structure here. Now, one of the key things that Powerproject allows you to do is use code libraries. Now, some of the previous webinars we did, you may have seen that we had these code libraries set up, and these are the ones that come with the template from Powerproject when you go File New. And we've got different ones set up in here. We've got trade contractor as examples. The advantage is you can set up your own of these libraries with your own items that you can color up and set the color for. Each of these items, if I look at there, you can set a fill style, you can choose a background color and then a pattern that mixes those together. And then all you do is you may want to then just drag and drop those across. So very quickly, I can drag and drop, and if I want to assign the same one to items like that, I can just drag and drop in there and they're assigned in there. But for presentation wise, very quick and easy, and I'm not restricted to the number of colors I can use, number of shades I can use. I can have them all assigned inside there. And one of the advantages we have is that I'm showing my trade color in there. I've also got one called risk factor. So I could actually turn around and say, this one here I don't want to display. I do want to display this one here for risks. And now I can highlight these and color them in a different way and code them up in a different way. This is useful for presentation, but it's also useful for filtering and displaying purposes with your program. So in here, I've literally just assigned those as I've gone through, and I've got those. But if I want to switch back, I can turn that off, and I can turn this one back on, so I can see the codes via trades or risk factor. And I say the number of items you can have in here, there is no limit to the number of code libraries. There's no limit to the number of items you can have displayed in here and set up in here. And again, if you don't want to see them, you can just turn it off inside there and turn that one off inside there. Go back to the default style. So we can set up colors and codes and assign them to our project, but you'll also see without those assigned, our summary tasks, our normal tasks, and even if I had a milestone, they have all this default green color, this very dull green color, which comes from the template. But again, what I can do here is, if I go to the Format tab and go to Format Bar Chart, and on my Task tab, the first tab that's up there, you actually have the ability to change the default appearance of activities. And so I can say, I want all my tasks to look like this with this pattern. I want all my summary tasks to look like this with this pattern or not. I'm just going to choose solid colors. I'm going to have all my milestones look like this with this color. So if I haven't coded them up, they now look like this, and that's my default colors. So again, you can theme that whichever way you might want to with your for your company. Now, all of the things I'm showing you here, once you've set them up, you can actually then start assigning those to a template. So every time you go File New, you don't have to do this again. It's always there. And so that's one of the advantages inside that. Now, other things that, and again, I'm just using a simple project to explain this. We will move to a different project as we go through. So what I've done here is I've got my task titles here, my duration, start dates, and so forth. And my tasks over here, and in front of each of my activities, you see the actual line number that's appearing in there. And again, I can tailor that and customize that to however I want it to look, in a sense. So in here, if I go to my format bar chart, and I've got my left data display, which is my line number, which you can see over here. I also have a right data display, which I can choose, and I can choose any of my columns that I've got in there. And so I can look at those. I can go down here and say, well, I might want to show my title. So I go identification name, apply on that, and you can see that's there. I can choose whether it's opaque or not in the background. So you can change and do that. And if I don't want to do any of that, I just set it blank and it disappears. So I can set it on the left or the right or in the middle of the task as I go. Now, what some people would do, and then for this purposes, I'm just going to make that into a milestone in here. And again, formatting wise, just one thing, I can easily just drag it out to see more in detail. We also have the ability to, as well as putting the text on the sides, up here we have an annotation button. So this annotation button I click on, and it now gives me a cursor hanging at the end of a task. And what I can do with that is I can go to the end of a task and notice the cursor changes to show me where it's going to attach the annotation. And it's important here that when I attach it, it means when that task moves, the annotation moves with it. So I can attach it to the end or the beginning, underneath, on top, in the middle to the left, in the middle to the right, on the corner there. So we have multiple ways, inside corner, outside corner. So other systems usually might offer up to like 5 different points of connectivity to text and annotations to your tasks. We go beyond that because really we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15. It's about 15 or 16 different connection points on any task. Now, what's nice here is if I go to the end here and I click, it gives me a cursor and I can actually type something in it if I wanted to. If I don't want to type it and I want it to be automatic, I just right click on it and it allows me to see the information, again, the fields accessible. So if I go here and say I want to see the finish date in there, it asks me, is it coming from this current task and current bar and the current chart I'm using? Yes. And it gives me this little finish, and if I click away, it's now put the finish date on the end of that. Now this task, when I move this, the annotation moves with it and adjusts itself with it. So it's live data moving back and forth. So really easy to use, put in there. But again, it's on one task and I don't really want to, I've only got 12 tasks here. I don't want to go through every 12 and doing that. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to right click on it and then go to properties. And very quickly I can say, well, actually, I don't want to have that border around it. And actually, background wise, I don't want to have a background. I just want it there and be opaque and so forth. So I click away and there it is. And again, still the same when I move it around, but it's not as intrusive now on my project. So then I say, okay, well, I'll select it again. I right click on it and go to properties. And actually I say, well, what I want to do is, and again, I could change the format of the font and style. But down here, I'm actually going to make it an auto annotation. And if I click on that, you can see now it's automatically applied that to every task, and it's using the finish date of every task in there. So I can see that quite clearly, and as each one's changed, it will move. But I may not want to have it on every task. So I can actually use a filter. So if I've created a filter before, and let's just say milestones only, it now only appears against milestones. And the great thing about that is I draw a task, I make it a milestone, it automatically appears. And again, if I wanted to have something different against summaries, which showed name, I could apply that just to summaries. So I can keep on adding this as it goes, and wherever this task goes, that annotation will follow. And again, it is still just one annotation, but it's automatically with a filter applied to it. It's a very nice way of working with that. So I'll just remove that out of there. So that's putting text on, and say, have a play around with it. There's lots of things you can do with that in there. The next side is, when we're looking at formatting, is things like grid lines. Now, I did already show you that inside here, you can actually turn off your grid lines. Like so. But you can also, again, either go to the grids up here or right click in your grid area and say, your date zone and say grids in here, and you can see that you can have your grid lines here. And these are all the default ones that come with the project, the template that you work with. And if I wanted to change the style of these, so change my weekly style to this, and I want to change it to blue, and I want it to be thicker like that, in there and there, and then I just change that in there, close that, there we go. So we can see that, not necessarily the best option you might want to use, but you can see the point of adding those in there. And again, they're obviously default grid lines for this particular view inside this project at this point in there. Now, if I go back to grid lines in there, and obviously we've got these different ones set in there, you can actually say if they're going to be underneath the holiday that you may appear or not on screen. But there are abilities. I can actually add a new one, which is called, let's call it my date in there. And I'm going to choose a variable date in there. And I can actually select a specific date. So if I've got key dates that I want to have lines going down, I can do that. So if I go to July, and I'm going to go July 8th on there, and I'm going to say I want a line, I want it to be thick, and I'm going to have it as red. And there, I'm going to just change that back down to non-intrusive color and style, so it's much better in there. Apply that, and then we have this date going down here, and we can see that appearing, and that's always going to be on that date, regardless of what I move my task to. So it's a great way of doing that. Now, I selected a date in here, and I actually chose that date. But I can also, inside Powerproject, and this is a number of different date fields that you can pick, you can actually choose a date relative to your system clock, your computer's date. So I can say, I want to have it on, let's say, today's date, and apply that, close that. Let me just draw a task here. There it is on today's date. Now, as my clock down the bottom changes down here, this date will move along your chart automatically. So it's a really quick and easy way to play with those settings and have those in there. And again, I've got today, and I can actually say today plus 1 week if I wanted to. So it allows you to really customize what you can do inside just that grid line section in there. Okay, let's get rid of that. So the other part here is in the date is with the grid lines is your date zone at the top. And you've seen up here, you can actually right click and you can insert extra date lines and different lines that you want in there. And just as a note here, if I add in annual units in there and just go into its properties, the annual units allows me to choose which units it's going to count annually. So you can have multiple of those if you wanted to there, and just set it to unused if you don't want them in there. But one of the features that not everybody's aware of inside Powerproject is that I can go in my date zone and I can right click at any point in time in my date zone and say start new scale zone. And you may notice now it puts this very thin line here. Now with this line here, I can actually shrink this side of the line. I can then add a new line here, shrink the end of that, but then in between, I can expand inside it. So I can focus in like a fisheye view of a specific part of that, my project, which means I'm not having to print 2 years worth of project when people are only interested in the 1 month that's there. And again, if I look at my grid lines inside here, you'll notice I've got day grid lines that actually now have a zone 1, 2, and 3. At the moment, they're not appearing on any of them. I want them to appear on zone 2, apply that. So there's my daily grid lines, but they're not appearing in the before and after side of it. And when you print it out, this is what you get as well. So this is a really useful way of tailoring it to how you want it to appear. And those date scales there, they're set up here. And again, I can choose a variable date. So I could say today plus 1 week. So it's the next week always showing inside there. And if you save the view, they're kept with it. And I can just remove those if I want to return back to my normal reality side here. But you could have a view specifically set up for that. So that's a really nice way of controlling that side of it with the grid lines and also your date zones that you have inside there. Now, once you've done that, you've done your grid lines, you've done your date zones, you've got your ruling lines going across. And again, some systems have ruling lines going across, some don't. Again, inside here, you can obviously turn them off as an overall. Or if you wanted to, you can actually right-click in the blank space inside here and say ruling lines. And here's the default ones, but you can actually put specific lines in as well. So I could add a specific one to go in. So if I selected a particular item in there and I went into ruling lines inside there, so I've done that, and I go ruling lines over here. If I wanted to, I could set specific ruling lines in there, apply ruling lines to selected lines in there. I could just change that to so I've inserted a special line in there that's only going to be on that line for me. It's a really quick and easy way to do that, and you can customize it. You can get it to automate against different summaries and so forth, and you can also take it a step further if you're doing sorting to automate where it puts the ruling lines inside there. But again, it's a way of presenting, a way of controlling your project in this side. And I'm just doing a very simple project. I do have a more complex one over here that you can do the same thing here, but I'm just doing it on this side. Now, taking it a step further here, and I'm going to go back to this project now just to show you. This one here has got a few more activities, and in this project, we might want to highlight school terms. We may want to be aware that we're working in a certain particular time that could have implications. It's not got implications to our project, but it might have. So we want to be aware of it on screen. So one of the things we can do inside here in Powerproject, we can go into shading. And inside shading, I can go into here and I can say I want to add some shading in, and I can choose my dates, and I'm going to choose in here, for example. Again, remember, I can choose variable months. So I could say I want to choose month start to month end if I wanted to, and apply that in there, and I am just chosen it on a date where I don't have any there. So if I do that, there you go. There's this month highlighted automatically. But I may actually want to specify this rather than there. I actually want to say, well, actually in September, there's 2 weeks in September that we have to be aware of from the 7th of September to, and we go into here, and I'm going to go into 7th of September to the 13th of September, we need to be aware, and apply that. Just remove that there so we can see. And now we can see that that period is now highlighted. It's not making any impact on my project. It's not stopping me from doing anything. It's just making me aware. And again, what some people would do is they would, in their template, may set up the school holidays if you're working around schools. It could be not holidays or public holidays because it's not affecting your project. It's just a way of highlighting these areas. So if there's certain events that are going on when you're doing construction, you can highlight those to make people aware that there could be problems inside those. And again, that shading can just be turned on or off if you wanted to inside there. If I just turn the shading off, or you can actually go into your shading side here and just turn it off or add other ones in as you go. So that's a quick way of looking at some of those formatting options. You've got a standard in there, and again, and that's why with the grid lines, with the ruling lines, with links going between your projects. So if I go into here, I've got my links going between my project. I can turn off up here in my little display switches. I can just turn things on and off as I go. I can turn progress off, I can take flags off. So you can really simplify the project, enabling you to export it out and print it or display it to someone to get the picture and the story across rather than overwhelming people with information that they don't need to see. So half the battle when you're trying to communicate is you're showing someone with a 200-300 line schedule. You need to simplify it as much as possible. Focus in on what area you want them to see. And again, over here, we also have that ability over here to focus in just on that one section or just that section you're looking at. And it's all about the formatting side and controlling that side. So that's the first set of that. Now, moving a step further, we also talk about progress. Now, with progress, and again in here, I've got a progress line over here, which is my project report date. With Powerproject, you can have multiple progress lines, and if you have the ability to set these up inside your project, very, very useful. And if I just show you, for example, in here, if I go into my Library Explorer, and then what I want to do is I'm going to go into my progress periods. There is my progress period. I'm going to say that's going to be week 1, and I'm going to set the date, and my project date was started from here. So I'm going to say that's actually at the end of the week. That's my week 1. Then I'm going to have a week 2, week 3, week 4. Notice how quick and easy this is to set up. It automatically does a week apart, automatically sets the color for you. So when I come back here, I've now got these all set up. I just hold that, week 1, 2, 3, 4. I turn my progress line on. There is my progress line that I've set up with the default color. And as I start applying progress to this, and I put some progress on that, it colors that up. I can then easily just over here move to week 2, and I can say now put more progress into this, and I might say that's now 90% complete. And notice in there, if I zoom in, I actually get to see the different colors of the progress period, so I can see when the work was actually carried out. So even if I'm not straightening the line, I'm not pushing items out, I can still see where things happened, which is great news, because you can then present that internally to people and so forth if you want to demonstrate when things happened. But also, if you then look from a client's perspective, you want to simplify this, I could just go into my format bar chart again and go to progress, and I can either turn shading off completely, so I don't want to see progress shading, turn it back on in there. I can use it from the period, so the colors that are appearing in there, or I can have it fixed, and I have it like that. So it's just shown on the task there, and I can do it on the summaries the same inside there. I can even turn out and say, well, actually, rather than default, I want it solid shading, and I'm going to do solid shading in there. So if I do that, it colors the whole part of the task and the summary up. And again, remember, I can also alternate and say, I'm not worrying about summaries, I just want to see tasks. And I might have that as a green or a blue or whatever color I want. And I can hide completed tasks. So I can really go to town by actually showing the progress in a simple way. And once I've set this up on my screen, I can save this as a view. And that's a key part to this. Now, when it comes to presenting this back and printing it out to people in here, if I just go to let's turn that off for a moment, remove that in there. So I've got my bar chart in there, I've got my links if I want to see them, they're all inside there. If I go to print, now some packages you use will have your headers and footers, and they seem to give you a nice number of options for printing. If I go into here and just go to print in here, this is our default print. This is one of the default what we call border files that come with the software, and we can see our Gantt chart here. Now that's very useful to see. If we go into our print options, we can start to see what options we actually get. Obviously we can choose our printer, very useful. We can print to the clipboard. So we can actually, we had that selected and we didn't have the printer selected. When you go to print, it goes into your Windows clipboard. You can open up an email, a Word document, and you can actually print out and paste it in as a picture into there. So you don't even have to print it straight to the printer. You could paste it into other objects, which is really useful, and include it as part of other parts of settings. And again, so then if I go into details, and this is where it gets interesting, because rather than having headers and footers, we have border files inside Powerproject, and we supply you with 1 or 2 starting border files, as you can see here. The ones that start with BLK are blank, they have nothing else. CHT are for chart. You have the BIM ones, which include the 3D model with it. You have the FLT for filtering, HST for histograms, and mosaicing ones down here that print the different titles. And again, if I choose this one here and just close on that, you can see no logo on that one, it's different. If I go back into print options and details, and I say in here, well, actually there's some example ones. If I go to example 2, in there. You can see we've now got a different layout. We've got this down the bottom, but it's not just text. We can control where all these lines are appearing. And so the reason why is that we actually have a package that comes with Powerproject called PowerDraw. And if I just edit this border file here, there is PowerDraw, and it's all this great interface, and I can insert pictures, move things around. I can have pictures on there. I can do whatever I want. I can have the bar chart only in a small corner. I have pictures elsewhere. I could import pictures from other places to design it how I wanted it to look. So really, really powerful way of changing your presentation and giving it your own look as you go through. You also have the ability to really start playing with the scaling. So in here, you can really home in on how many pages you print across and down, how it scales across. So you can really refine it to fit your needs. Number of lines per sheet, if you wanted to print a certain number of lines per sheet. And we even have this at fit to most or try to fit exactly. And the try to fit exactly won't do silly things. It won't try and put one line on an entire page. It won't try and put 400 lines on one page. So it makes it much more usable when you print out and controllable. You can even have, when you print out, you can get it to print across a number of pages, which you then stick together. So if I have fit border around output or one border per page, if I do the output, you can sit there with your scissors and put it back together and sticky tape to make it one output, or you can have a border around each page as a booklet format. And again, so it's just being aware you've got this flexibility of all these formatting options. And then when you come into appearance, this is where you can show, in here, you can have the legends on the bottom of the pages or on all of the bottom page or all the pages. Your code library that you assign, so when I assign codes to it, I can actually have those appearing at the bottom as legends. I can have my date zone appearing at the bottom and the top of the page if I put date zone at foot in there, and I'll see that in a moment. I've got a spreadsheet, I've got my legends, and what's interesting here is I've got my code library legends in here. I can actually set only the ones that are used or relevant ones at the bottom. So only if they've been used on that page would it show them in the legend on that page. So you don't suddenly get 400 code library items on a page that's only got 30 of those activities on. So you can really tailor this to how you want it to look. And there we go. So we've just done that, and there's my date zone at the bottom. And again, I can print that out, and I can use that as I feel fit to. So printing really easy, and you can go into a full preview in here. And the great thing about here is that when I'm looking at this, I can actually look at this and just say, well, I'm looking at that, how it's appearing. I can zoom in on it, zoom on a small part of it, change the border file, to this is a extreme one. You can see different way of looking at it. So I can just play around with these as I go in there. There we go. See different ways of looking at it, and then print it as I need. So if I close that now, back to my chart. So this is all very good that I've done this. I've set up my printing, and I will actually go back into here because there's one thing under printing I wanted to show. So I've gone through and set all my printing options up. I want to keep those. So all I do is I save it as a profile. So in here, I just literally do a save as a profile, give it a name, which means it can then be chosen in here as a default. That border file I chose, I can embed into this if I wanted to as well. So you can really go to town, set it up as you want, and it's there every time you go to print. You don't have to reset up those settings, which becomes important because otherwise there's a lot of work needed to reset it up every time. So once I've done all of that and I've set these formattings up, the one important thing to be aware of is under the View tab here, I can actually save this view. And if I save this view, it will remember the table I'm using. And again, that table may be that I've gone into Format Cells and changed the settings. So I want that as a duration of days. And I'm going to have it as decimal in there. So now that's showing me days. It will remember that table and the formatting on that table. It will remember my date zone and my grid lines, my time zones that I've got set up there, my colors of my default colors of my tasks in there, which code library is being displayed. All of that can be saved as a view. And if I call it my view in there, then what I do is you'll see my views there. And if I chose a different one in here, for example, there, the colors are slightly different in there. They're different default colors. If I go to one in here for progress and go to this, there, that's a different view, different table. But at any time, I've already got it open up here, but I could always just open up my view and it goes back to that side. So it's a really powerful way of controlling and not worrying about, once you set it up as you want it once, it's set up as you want it. Now, the final part of this, and we're reaching the end of this session, is that when I create a new project, I go File, New in here, and you can see I've got all these templates. Now, all a template is a Powerproject PP file saved in the template location. And in Powerproject, if you go to Options and under File Locations, it shows you where the template path is. So that is my template path in there, and so that's in there. And if any PP file I add into that will become a template. And again, templates are really easy because they take the stress and hassle off. And if you speak to Solid Support about the creation of templates, you have calendars, you have codes, you have all your views and settings up there. So any project you work, it may be a different project, but they are standardized with your settings. So that's really an overview, a little bit of a whirlwind tour for the last half hour or 35 minutes of your formatting options. And you can set up, obviously there are lots of things in here. And again, with Powerproject, you can always do things in multiple ways, depending on how you want to do them. I inserted an annotation. I can actually put a picture in as well. I can drag a picture and browse and add a picture to the end of a task if I wanted to. Again, all these settings are remembered as I finished in there. And so really, that's everything. If anyone has any questions, let me just go back to this. Please let us know. Type in any questions there. There you've got. One of the ones we've been asked actually is, let me just go back to this. Someone asked about the views, that if you set up a view in here, can you take that to other projects? So one of the things that Powerproject allows you to do is if you've got the two projects open you want to copy it between, you just go to More Views, you can select the view there, and you've got a copy to. And then you can choose the project that you want to copy it to, and that will copy it across in there. And then when I go to the other view in there, I've now got my view again. And there it's got the default colors and everything the same. Yeah, I've got my code library assigned in there, so I turn that off. There you go, as I do. So I can just copy those across as I work on it. If anyone has any other questions, if you don't have the questions now, it's fine, just let us know. Contact Solid Support, we can always reply back to you with those and just get in touch. And I know if you've got Powerproject, just experiment and have a play with it. So there's lots of options you can do. Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. That's fantastic. We will post this webinar onto our website over the next few days. We might even cut it up into smaller pieces so that we can send them out to you all. Thanks again. If you want to see anything else, please just get in touch with us and look out for the next webinar that we might be running soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.